Hello, everyone. This is the second in a series of videos that I'm putting together to put together kind of a review and or product description of Fantasy Grounds modules. I feel like there's a lot of reviews on individual adventures in PDF form and what have you, but what I really want to focus on is how the modules, whether it's an adventure or a supplement, translate into Fantasy Grounds. How is the conversion? How are the pieces? How are the maps? Whatever it may be. So in this case, today I'm reviewing the Creature Components Volume 1. It's a 5th edition by Playground Adventures. And full disclosure, I want to let everyone know that I actually did this conversion into Fantasy Grounds. So any purchase that you make on the Fantasy Grounds store, I do get a portion of it. So I want you to know that up front. Now, the main purpose of this video is I really want you all to understand, if you're considering buying it, what will you get? So I really want people to understand, what is it I'm buying? Because I hate buying a module just looking at a couple of screenshots and not really understanding what's in it. So that's the purpose. This module is all about adding something to your adventures as a DM that will really engage your players, in my mind. So it's all about, in this case, how do you harvest components from creatures? So that, to me, that was kind of a unique twist, which is why I thought it'd be interesting to convert. So if you start, there's a kind of a prologue. It's written in the third person, similar to Volo's Guide and some of the other modules. Some conversion notes that I put together on how I did this, an introduction, little description of the components. How do you harvest components? So there's a whole discussion on harvesting guidelines, and there's different categories, lesser, moderate, and greater, with varying degrees of effects, of course. There's also the ability to harvest components from a live host. So the monster doesn't necessarily have to be killed, although you will do some damage to it. So that's kind of interesting. And also talks about some vials and how would you actually collect the components. There's a discussion of how the spell enhancements work. And again, it ranges from lesser to greater with varying degrees of effects. Also an ability to create magic items from the components, which I thought was interesting. And then also a description. As we get into each of these components, you're going to see various categories like components themselves, which may be the horn and essence. What is it that you're actually extracting? What's the potency, lesser, moderate, or greater? What is the augmentation? It might be for a specific spell, or it might be a specific ability or skill. And then also the cost. And usually there's a cost and there's a price that's kind of a marked up version. And then obviously a description. So with that, let me show you. So just in terms of the scope, there's 116 individual components. You can kind of see, starting up here with Aasimar, there's blood, there's aboleth, cerebral fluid, and mucus. There's angel, feathers, there's blood, there's demon horns. There's pit fiend, hearts, ice devil antenna. So this goes all the way down. There's nagas, there's mummies, all kinds of different sturges, succubus. So 116 different unique components. So let's kind of get into specifics of, what is it that I've coded in here? What do you get with this module? So I'm going to start with Ankeg Saliva. So in most cases, I'll usually have an item in here. If there's a spell coding, it'll be populated here and the effect will say yes. If it's no, the spell will be blank or say NA and the effect will say none. And then you can see the potency, augmentation, cost, price, and description. So in this case, if you open the inventory tab for your players, I've already put it on here, so let me take that off for just a second. So you drag the item on to the equipment tag, and then your players, if you've identified it, can see all the detail. Now, the one difference here you'll see is that they see the cost, they don't see the marked up price. Kind of if they would have to buy it from someone, it more typically be this price. So if you get into the actions tab, now I've just made this a blank character. I've created a category for creature component. So if you grab this spell off of this character sheet, or you can also drag it right out of the shield from the spells. If you drag it on to creature components here, it'll populate the effect. Now in this case, it increases the damage die of a spell that inflicts acid damage up to a maximum of a D12. So I've included effects for damage up to 1d12, just so you can use any of these, whichever one is appropriate. And then it also the caster gains immunity to acid damage. So I've coded that as well. And I learned this from Rob, but I put a description in front. So when you populate the effect, and I'll just do this really quickly. This is already coded to self. Click on the effect. So you can see that it shows up on the character as Ankeg Saliva Immune Acid. So as a DM, I know exactly what that's from, which I think is cool. So let's get rid of that. Let's do another one. Demon Nalfeshni Cerebral Fluid. I thought this was super cool. This is a fun one. This is an expensive one. It's the brain fluid of a Nalfeshni demon. And it also includes, in addition to effects that would allow you to enhance mental ability scores of intelligence, wisdom, and charisma, and cause saving throws and ability checks to be treated as if they were proficient, it also has a potential effect for addiction. So I won't do the item again. In this case, it has an image, so you can see, if you click on that, you can see that guy. Kind of cool looking. So I won't show you the item again, but let's populate the spell effect. So now in this case, you see I've got the charisma proficiency, intelligence proficiency, and wisdom. I just broke them out. I thought it'd be easier, and then they're all based on the proficiency that Fantasy Grounds will recognize. So if you drag this on the character and drop it, then it'll recognize that you are proficient in your checks. So if we do this really quickly, put it on him, and this is charisma. So if I go to his main tab and do a charisma check, you can see the effects +2. If I do a charisma saving throw, effects +2. So he does have a -1 to charisma, but he also offsets that with a +2. So I think that's pretty cool. And in addition to all of that, based on if he does become addicted, they have to succeed on a wisdom saving throw, and they take a -2 to intelligence, wisdom, and charisma, and gain a level of exhaustion if they fail. So I have those coded as well, which is kind of cool. And Fantasy Grounds does recognize the minuses that I put in here, and then I also have the dis check and dis save and dis attack for exhaustion. So I thought that was a fun one. Finally, let's just look at Pit Fiend Horn. So in this case, if you drag that spell on again, this allows you to enhance ability to one or more physical ability scores, strength, dexterity, or constitution. Cause all saving throws, ability checks, and skills to be treated as if you're proficient. So again, it's going to give you your proficiency. And if you drag these onto the target, which is why I didn't code this to self, if you drag it onto the target, then it's going to give you your proficiency and add that to strength, dexterity, or constitution checks. So that's essentially it. In addition to the coding on the spell effects, on the actual components, there's also a few new feats. These feats are all based on the components. So you've got Angel Blooded, Component Caster, Crafter. So if you click on these, you can drag these onto the character sheet and it'll populate as a feat. You just need to increase whichever score you want yourself. In addition to that, there's also a few magical items, and these are coded when possible as well. So you have these different vials, forges, quills, manicore spikes. So where I do, and in this case, this is just the item, there wasn't the ability to code that. But when I did have the ability to code it, I have a spell here that you can drag and drop. So that's it. I thought this was a cool module. I think it enhances some campaigns if you want to do something different. So I hope you like this video, but please like or dislike. Like to know if you all like these types of videos, and I'm going to work on probably some adventure modules next and show you, kind of what I think of the various conversions and maps and what have you. I'll probably start with videos that I've done and others that I know have done, or I should say modules that I've done myself, and just so you kind of get a feel for how these reviews will go. But after that, I will start doing other third parties as well. So again, hit the like or dislike. Love to know if these are helpful or if they're not. And I hope to see everyone around the Fantasy Grounds forums soon.